needs and mobilizing them for resistance is to create mutual aid projects and get lots of people to participate in them. Social movements that have built power and won major change have all included mutual aid. Yet it is often a part of movement work that is less visible and less valued. In this moment, our ability to build mutual aid will determine whether we win the world we long for or dive further into crisis. We can imagine what is possible when we come together in this way by examining the response of Hong Kong's protest movement to COVID-19. In 2019, a massive anti-government mobilization swept Hong Kong, with people opposing police and seeking greater control over their lives. By the time the COVID-19 pandemic emerged, Hong Kong's chief executive, Carrie Lam, had an 80% disapproval rating. Hong Kong's protest movement had escalated significantly, with protesters coordinating sophisticated mass mobilizations, including the use of bold tactics like fighting police with poles, projectiles, laser pointers, and petrol bombs. Lam was remarkably non-responsive to the pandemic, despite the vulnerable position of Hong Kong, a densely packed city with a history of epidemics and a high-speed railway connection to Wuhan, where the COVID-19 pandemic started. Hong Kong residents criticized Lam for her delay in closing the city's borders and her order barring city workers from wearing masks. But, despite the government's failures, the people of Hong Kong, mobilized by the protest movement, launched a response that suppressed the original wave of COVID-19 and mitigated its resurgence. On the day the first COVID-19 case in Hong Kong was confirmed, people from the protest movement created a website that tracked cases, monitored hotspots, reported hospital wait times, and warned about places selling fake personal protective equipment, PPE. The protesters defied the government's ban on masks and countered misinformation from the World Health Organization discouraging their use. They set up brigades that made and distributed masks, specially making sure they reached poor people and old people. They created a system of volunteers to set up hand sanitizer stations throughout crowded tenement housing and maintained the supply of sanitizer at the stations. They also created digital maps to identify the station sites. This essential mutual aid work was complemented by bolder strategies. When the government refused to close the border with China, 7,000 medical workers, as part of labor unions that had been formed during the protest movement, went on strike, demanding PPE and that the border be closed. Members of the protest movement threatened the government with stronger action if steps were not taken to address the epidemic, and explosives were found at the border with China, possibly for this purpose. The Hong Kong government then created quarantine centers in dense neighborhoods, but never consulted the people in those neighborhoods, and the protest movement responded by throwing explosives into the quarantine centers before they were used, causing the government to change the location of the facilities to less densely populated holiday villages. As a result of these efforts by a mobilized and coordinated movement, and no thanks to the government, Hong Kong had an immensely successful response to the first wave of COVID-19. Through the combination of mutual aid and direct action to force concessions, the protesters did what the government would not do on its own, saving untold numbers of lives. This book provides a concrete guide for building mutual aid groups and networks. Part 1 explores what mutual aid is, why it is different than charity, and how it relates to other social movement tactics. Part 2 dives into the nitty-gritty